it's going to be a very busy week next week, starting on Monday with the Central Bank Monetary Policy, a two-day meeting. But we'll talk about that later on the show. But let's get started with the infrastructure. Nigeria is looking for money left, right, and center to fix its critical infrastructure. But how do we use the debt market or Market Street to bring this critical infrastructure into fruition? Let's talk to two of the guys who are neck deep in this business. From Chapel Hill, Denham, welcome, Lanre Boluro. Good morning. It's good to have you.
Good morning, Bosun.
Thank you for coming to the program. And of course, Ansho Rai, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigeria Infrastructure Debt Fund. By the way, the only infrastructure debt fund in Nigeria and in Africa, private sector led. Thank you, Rai, for being here.
Thank you.
It's great to have two of you. Nigeria needs a lot of money, and the government does not have all the money, as it were, the deep pocket to do this. So, Lanre, why is it important to explore the private sector funding window?
I mean, listen, I think it's proven globally that, private sector-led initiative like this is very efficient. The governments, should be providing an enabling environment for the private sector to finance such initiative. And we set out almost 3 years ago, and officially 2 years ago, to set up this fund. And we've demonstrated that it can be done. Led by Ansho, we've been able to talk to the investors, particularly the pension funds in Nigeria, to let them understand the critical need for long-term patient capital to finance such projects in Nigeria.
Are investors interested, Ansho, from your experience? Are they interested? These are domestic capital, domestic savings. Why is this very important vis-a-vis using foreign currency funding options?
Well, generally speaking, the underlying projects that these infrastructure sectors have revenues which are denominated in Naira. So when you are passing on your toll road, you pay your toll in Naira. When you are paying your electricity bill, you don't pay it in dollars, you pay it in Naira. And therefore, fundamentally, if as a project sponsor, you are using foreign currency to finance your transaction, and at the same time you have your revenues coming in Naira, you will have a train wreck the way we had it back in 2015, 2016. So that mismatch is really what can kill a project. A perfectly viable project otherwise just suffers because the macro has moved against it. And given the fact that these are 20, 30-year type transactions that we are looking at, it's almost inevitable. It's a matter of not if, but when. And that is why domestic currency has an extremely critical role to play. So the G7 countries don't finance their infrastructure in any currency other than their own. The BRICS countries don't finance their infrastructure in any currency other than their own. And why should the large emerging markets such as Nigeria not have that benefit and the advantage of channeling the domestic savings into productive assets? And that's really what we are trying to achieve using the instrument of an idea.
But we're talking about a currency that faces a very weak economy and inflation and other challenges here. So do you think using LCY, which is the local currency unit, is still the best way to go for this funding? Ansho?
Absolutely, because we have now done analytical work around multiple African transactions where they were financed in dollars and there was a certain delivered cost of, let's say, power. And 5 or 7 years down the line, the currency has depreciated now 80%, and suddenly your delivered cost of power is now 5x. So there is this misnomer or a myth that fundamentally somehow foreign currency financing is cheaper when compared to local currency financing. So nominally, yes, the interest rates are higher when it comes to local currency, but when you sort of incorporate the inevitable depreciation of the currency that you're going to face, it's no different. And that's really what's driving the whole initiative that across Africa, that there must be more focus on local currency financing.
Larry, when you look at Nigeria and what we're trying to do, what's the experience at NIDF here, and of course your local experience in the broader investment market when it comes to getting local investors to buy into infrastructure projects, putting their money into it? Do we have the believability? Are these bankable projects? What do we bring to the table that provide comfort for local investors here against the government, say, or whoever say, look, let's just borrow money from the FDB, from whoever out there, from the multilateral agencies, and get it done?
So Angela, really talked in depth around currency. So it's critical that this is done in local currency. Tenor is a friend. We are the only source of 10-year type of money. Infrastructure is a 30-year plus type projects. So you need long-dated funds to bankroll such initiatives. Banks today can't do more than 2 or 3 years, and given where Basel III guidelines are, they won't be doing this business long term. But in regards to getting comfort, from investors, first of all, it's the team. The NIDF team led by Anshul, I experienced. They've done this globally. The governance around the fund is very, very strong. The projects, these are bankable, brownfield, existing, going concern companies. So strong cash flows, are monopolistic in their nature. So could be a company that does gas pipelines that has a 30-year right of way. No one can come into that space. And those are the things when we talk to investors that give them comfort. And there's also a lot of development outcomes from the work that we do also. So gas flaring has come down. Job, both direct and indirect, has been created from this. And overall, we are adding to the infrastructure stock of the country. So the core of our investor base are the pension funds, and this tick all the boxes for their investment guidelines. So it's a win-win for everybody.
The size of the portfolio we're looking at here, considering the size of infrastructure deficit, speak to that to us, Anshul. What's on the table? How much in dollar terms?
Well, in dollar terms, yeah, there's estimations in the master plan for infrastructure of Nigeria, which gets up to $1 trillion. Well, that's aspirational, but realistically speaking, yes, the country still needs somewhere around $30 to $50 billion annually for the next 10 to 20 years, just to sort of catch up with the deficit that exists. And in that sense, what we are doing at NIDF is still just scratching the surface. We have huge appetite and interest in commercially viable projects which also deliver impact, and we'll continue to do so. But ultimately, I think the most important thing is to have the proof of concept right, which is what we have done over the last 24 months, and then now sort of create that accelerator effect, the bandwagon effect, where you can really ramp this thing up. So we are one of the potentially many channels that can sort of support that, sort of bridge that deficit. Government, as you know, in Nigeria, the federal government budget is just $30 billion, which obviously goes mostly towards interest servicing and administrative expenses. So the CapEx component is just tiny to make a real difference. So private sector capital has to be mobilized. And when it comes to a project, as you know, again, 70% typically would be debt funding. And that is why we think using channels such as NIDF, you can really make a dent over a 5-10 year period, a realistic difference.
Larry, do you think the market, we have the structure, 2 years, 3 years counting, do you think the structure is there, the market is deep enough to keep taking on specialized debt offerings such as DAYS or debt packages like DAYS for those who want to do infrastructure fund, those who want to do green bond for climate change projects into energy, doing solar, and any other form of sustainable energy?
Sure. I mean, the market is deep enough, and I think the NIDF as a model has proven, I mean, it's no more proof of concept anymore. I think it's a proven system. We hope to see, other funds like ourselves come into the market. We can't do by ourselves. We have a 200 billion naira program. The needs for the country is about $10 billion every year. So, and the market is deep enough. I mean, the pension funds alone, look at the new investment guidelines, there is a big allocation towards infrastructure through such channels like ourselves. I forgot to mention a point earlier. One of the key interests or why a lot of investors really like what we're doing is the returns. So I spoke around development outcomes earlier, but listen, it's an investment, right? And in 2 years, this instrument has returned 55%. Nothing in this market is giving you such, principal preserved, quarterly distributions. Another thing also, every quarter we're distributing income back to investors. You reinvest that over the last 2 years, total returns from this product is about 55%. Cash yield, for this year alone is around 17.4%. So, it works. Again, it works when done well. And we hope to see more, fund managers come with similar products. And we also, we just announced recently about to do another series, another capital raise again. And that's what we do. We come almost every other quarter to raise money and, to deploy into our pipeline, which has been, if you give me 20 billion naira today, I will spend it in a week.
I wish I have that. I wish I have that. But do we have a capacity, for example, to say, look, we want to build, I'm sure these are basically commercially viable infrastructure. Well, does that include train, railways, special economic zones, seaports?
The theoretical answer is yes. It will potentially could include, so the NIDF investment mandate incorporates those sectors. The question really is that are you implementing these projects in a commercially viable framework? And that's where the contractual arrangements and the underlying risk allocation is quite critical to whatever we do. So we are not sort of blind sort of charging into any project that comes through our doors. We do decline projects. So when I said we have healthy appetite for projects, that we have healthy appetite for well-structured projects. And that's some of the work actually that as a debt provider, we are actually upstreaming with our clients, that we help them prepare projects which are bankable. So right now we're working with half a dozen sponsors where we are giving them inputs, almost like advisory work for them, and which is free advice, to come up to those standards that can then make their projects eligible for financing from
So why is this it's a recurring phrase, bankable projects? Why is that an issue here in Nigeria? Larry, you here. So first, what's the problem there with bankable projects? Because you think if you have so much infrastructure deficit and the figure is so high, naturally should be bankable.
So it's all about a risk profile, right? So the nature of our investor base also, we need to secure their investments. So we need to, first of all, at least in this early stage, this nascent stage of our life cycle, we need to focus more on businesses that will give a return, that will be able to pay the principal and interest in a timely manner. Construction risk, that certain type of funds or monies that and those mostly might be equity investments that will go into such projects. For a debt fund, you need to start at what I'll call somewhat of a risk-free level first. And when you get to a critical mass, when the fund gets bigger, we will, and I'll put the national on the spot here, but eventually they will look at such projects, and make sure, we have the tolerance and the framework to fund such projects.
Foreign investors are interested in investing in Nigeria. Do you think the NIDF is a window for that? If they want to participate in infrastructure critical projects for Nigeria, because we need it. So if they find, well, perhaps going to the government could be a little bit very tenuous, whatever. Okay, let's look for private sector folks on Broad Street, and they say, well, perhaps we can help you folks fix this because we feel more comfortable dealing with the private sector rather than the government, the sovereign.
So we do see the FDI into infrastructure coming in. Obviously, that mostly refers to the equity side. So we are working with sponsors which are substantially foreign-owned, and who are bringing in additional capital to fund their expansion plans and businesses. And in addition to that, on the debt side, so historically, before the exclusion from the JP Morgan indices, 40% of the treasury market in Nigeria used to be owned by foreigners. So now, in 6 months' time, NIDF will be the single largest non-government issuer of a single ISIN paper. And at that point, we believe that those foreign investors from North America or Europe who are looking to invest in Nigeria on a fixed income basis would definitely be attracted towards instruments such as an IDF or green bonds or other project bonds that come through the channel of capital markets.
What sectors is taking the lead right now that investors want to put their money into in Nigeria? Are these sectors that are people-based or the one that just give returns to investors? What sectors is attracting investors' money?
I mean, it's a mix, if and for us, I mean, you look at our portfolio, about 50 to 60% is in the power and energy space.
Power
energy,
electricity.
Yes, correct. And if you look at any global, infra fund, or look at the IFC or the World Bank's portfolio, 60, 70% of that portfolio is mostly power. And listen, our country, and we were chatting offline earlier, the development that this country needs to embark on, or the levels where we need to get to as a country, we'll never get there until we fix this power situation. You know, you love your dollars. You seem to be quiet. You think that's the only way, but look at the power sector. Look at the Gencos and Disco. It's a currency issue. If you look at, they borrowed money in dollars to finance the acquisition. Back then, I believe the dollar was 120, 180 naira. Today it's 360. So imagine what that's done to the balance sheets and in regards to their debt service payments they have to do. And that's why infrastructure has to be in local currency, has to be long dated.
If I can just add to that, so over the next 6 to 12 months, the most opportunities that we see as an IDF are, in addition to power and energy, we see activity around telecoms. The gas flaring reduction monetization program, when that comes through, that should definitely be of interest. And we have sort of incoming inquiries. Off-grid solar is something on a commercial basis, something that we're seeing a lot of interest and activity, and we are funding some of those already. And finally, on the social infrastructure side, we think there is now a private sector-led sort of momentum that will add to the infrastructure stock on the social side as well, as much as the more commercially oriented power and transport type assets. So that's where we see in the next 6 to 12 months most of the activity.
Yeah. If you folks find anyone who is interested in agriculture, please add it to your portfolio.
Thank you.
We need food as well.
Of course.
But I think if we fix the energy and power, we should be able to fix a bit of our agricultural issues as well. And what we call agri-industrialization, because if I have farm produce, I can preserve it because there's no electricity. I can process it.
Yep.
Yeah, so
agri is all about the value chain, right? So like I said, processing, you need power, then logistics,
storage.
Right? In storage, you need to transport it, right? So the herdsmen, cattle issue it's a logistic issue. You go to Brazil, there are about almost 200 million heads of cattle, more than people in Brazil. Well, you won't see a cattle or cow on the road because cold storage infrastructure is what they ship the meat. All you need to do is move meat, not cow, and it's all infrastructure.
Next time, Larry, we're going to have a bit of more this cattle conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anso Rai and Larry Bilero from NIDF and Chapel Hill, Denham.